Welcome to Azeroth, Zeteskians. This is the Eastern Kingdoms. I'm starting off at the top of the map in the Blood Elf area with my Swift Green Windrider. Despite the Cataclysm bringing flying to most of the Eastern Kingdoms and the Kalimdor, this area was excluded from that. So we cannot fly in the Blood Elf areas. Similarly, for Alliance, the Draenei areas of Azure Mist Isle and Blood Mist Isle, you cannot fly there either. So this is the starting zone. Sunstrider Isle. Once I cross this bridge, we will be in the main area of Eversong Woods. And it is going to be a bit slow going. So while I am auto running, I'll just tell you about the Blood Elves that are here. They actually named themselves that after their society was ransacked by Arthas and the Scourge during the Third War, also known as the events of Warcraft 3. The survivors, which lived here, named themselves Blood Elves in honor of, the blood of the fallen and all that. There are other factions of elves that are very similar but don't call themselves Blood Elves. And if you notice this big scar here, this is the path that Arthas took through their walls and into their area to resurrect Kel'Thuzad in the Sunwell. This corrupted the Sunwell and robbed the High Elves of their source of magic, many of whom turned to Fel magic, which is why they have the green glowing eyes now, and they called themselves the Blood Elves. There are still High Elves in existence, ones that did not go to the Fel magic and were able to deal with, the withdrawal symptoms of their magic addiction. Illyria Windrunner would be one key example, although she has since become a Void Elf. Let me check the map here. Yeah, we're almost through. I didn't bother going into Silvermoon City itself. It is a pretty fancy city, but there's not much reason to go there if I'm exploring the map. And since I can't fly, this is going a bit slower than I'd like. Once we cross over here, we'll get to the other half of the Blood Elf area, the Ghostlands. So, still no flying allowed. We will go through a loading screen when it is going to allow us to fly. This area actually has a unique reputation for the people of Tranquiland, this little village or town up here. Pretty difficult to grind up that reputation, and there's not really any meaningful rewards for it. Eventually, once the warband reputations get backdated to allow for the previous expansions to be warband shared, it might be worthwhile doing. For now, I think I have it on my main character, but I haven't bothered on any of my alts. Zulaman down there is a raid, or it was a raid. I think they've since turned it into a 5-man dungeon. It's trolls. They are the age-old enemies of the elves here. So the elves, a lot of times you'll hear the term Quel'Thalas. That's referring to this whole area of Silmarmoon plus the Ghostlands plus Eversong Woods. That's all Quel'Thalas. It was guarded by a massive forest that Arthas chopped his way through on his way to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. Now, the Blood Elves, some of you who played Warcraft 3 may be confused by the lore because they didn't do a great job at explaining it, but only some of the Blood Elves followed Prince Kael'thas to Outland to join Illidan and ended up being the bad guys in the Burning Crusade, and, you know, the player characters slaughtered them, including killing Kael'thas. And later on, Kael'thas comes back as, I think, a Sanguinar, as kind of like a vampire Blood Elf, and then we kill him again. But that's only some of the Blood Elves. I know Warcraft 3 implies that it's all of them, but it's not. It's only some of them, and the majority of them actually stayed in Quel'Thalas, in Silvermoon, to rebuild. And there are actually some books that you can read that are from Sylvanas' perspective, that go into the history of her and her sisters, and it actually mentions her, Sylvanas, coming back to Silvermoon and looking at some of her friends that she fought beside before she died, and she sees how they regard her as a monster now, and they see her as this banshee that murdered children by her screams, and that basically cements her idea that she cannot rejoin them, and that led to her founding the Forsaken. If she had eavesdropped on a different conversation, maybe she would have come back to the Blood Elves and been accepted there and gotten them to accept, you know, a reunified Lordaeron and Quel'Thalas, because those two kingdoms used to be very closely tied together. Arthas spent a lot of his childhood in Quel'Thalas, getting training from the elves before he was inducted into the Paladin Order of the Knights of the Silver Hand. So, history could have unfolded very differently if Sylvanas had just overheard a different conversation, if her friends, her best friends that she had known for thousands of years, had not been so traumatized by seeing her ghost as a wraith, I think they call it, or a banshee, sorry, murdering, you know, children and innocent civilians in Silvermoon, which of course was done against her will because Arthas was commanding her at that time. So the Eastern Plaguelands that we just went through, the Light's Hope Chapel is a neutral area. There is a dungeon there, Stratholme. It has a rare mount, so a lot of people will go there for the mount. Stratholme also has a Caverns of Time instance version of it, where you go in and you see human Arthas before he turned into a Death Knight, and you help him kill the civilians of Stratholme, and confront Mal'Ganis and all that. If you've played Warcraft 3 or the Reforged version, there is a mission to do that, and in the original version you are kind of defending your base on two sides, and then also you're sending out expeditions to go in, destroy buildings, kill the civilians. You can either kill them before they turn into zombies, it still counts for points, and then you don't have to suffer any damage, or you can, you know, knock down the building and they'll turn into zombies rather quickly, and then you can kill them once they're zombies and once they're fighting back. This area here, Tirisfal Glades, does have two different versions of it. You can talk to Zindormi there, which is a bronze dragon disguised as a, I think, human female, to cycle between the pre-Cataclysm version to the post-Cataclysm version. Or, actually, sorry, the pre-Battle for Azeroth version versus the post-Battle for Azeroth version. It does get a little confusing when you're going through some of these zones on Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, because there's the original version from Vanilla WoW, and then there's the Cataclysm version, and then there's also the Battle for Azeroth version. So, you know, you're going around and all of a sudden you see a zone that's full of way higher level stuff, and you're like, hey, I thought this was supposed to be part of Vanilla. Well, they changed it. When Cataclysm came out, a lot of people were not happy with the changes, and it did lead to a lot of people dropping off and basically quitting WoW. But and I was technically one of them, although I had mitigating circumstances. I was, you know, heading off to university, so Cataclysm, having all my talent points reset, I'd really joined right at the beginning of Wrath, or in the pre-patch of Wrath. So for Cataclysm to come out and suddenly I'm no longer max level, my raiding gear no longer matters, and the map has all changed, and some of the quests that I had done no longer exist, and all that kind of stuff, it did definitely contribute to my decision to quit WoW at that time. But of course, as I've mentioned in previous videos, with World of Warcraft is kind of an addiction, so you never really quit, you just take breaks, and that break I think lasted for about 9 years before I went back to the game. Flying around here, there's a lot of important lore zones that I'm just kind of glossing over, because I'm finding that I have so much to say and there's not enough time to say it all. I could talk about this Dalaran crater. That's where the city of Dalaran used to be before it started floating around. It did get leveled and destroyed by Archimonde during the events of Warcraft 3, but then later on they rebuilt it, and it was the rebuilt version that was then lifted off, I guess you could say. It created the ability to fly. I don't think there's ever actually been a book written about those events, so I don't know all the details, but I do know that during the events of Warcraft 3, when Arthas sieged the city and then Archimonde destroyed the towers of Dalaran, it was still attached to the ground at that time. There's also here the Lordaeron Keep, otherwise known as Capital City. It's home of Arthas' family line, the Menethils. So Arthas Menethil, King Taranis Menethil is his father. If you've heard of Kalia Menethil, she is Arthas' sister, who was not mentioned in the lore until BFA, and they kind of, you know, retroactively explained her absence. She had gotten pregnant and had been whisked away to avoid any sort of political embarrassment. And when the Scourge hit, when Arthas came back, killed his father, and started massacring the countryside with his Scourge, her husband and I believe child were both killed by the Scourge, and she basically went into hiding after that. She didn't want to reveal who she was because she thought that she would be used as a political prisoner. But eventually, when BFA happened and Anduin and Sylvanas were working together to reunite some of the undead citizens of Lordaeron with their family members who had fled as refugees to Stormwind. Um, Kalia did reveal herself at that time. She had kind of infiltrated that meeting undercover and later revealed her identity to Anduin, and they kind of tried to keep it under wraps, keep it secret from Sylvanas, but they didn't do a good job of keeping that secret during the actual event, and that led to Sylvanas murdering or ordering the assassination of all of the undead that were trying to defect and join the humans. I did fly over Durnhold Keep briefly a few moments ago. That's where Thrall, as a child/teenager, was being held after the orcs lost their bloodlust and were very lethargic for a time. You know, withdrawal symptoms similar to the Blood Elves and their fell magic. Thrall was kept there, and he orchestrated an escape and rallied the troops. There were actually some veteran leaders from the Second War there when the orcs lost against the human alliance. Human, dwarf, gnome, elf, all the big ones. Yeah, so he actually got training and tutoring from some of the previous Horde leaders. So different versions of the Horde, you know, Thrall's Horde. They don't really distinguish when they call themselves the Horde. Similar to in real life, you have places where people, you know, call themselves this thing, and they try to make you think that they're connected to this ancient lineage of kings or empires or whatever, but in reality there's like a massive gap where there's a discontinuity and they're not actually related and they're not actually sanctioned by that historical stuff. Yeah, the Horde is very similar. So you have the first Horde, which was Gul'dan and or not really Gul'dan, more Ner'zhul and Blackhand uniting the tribes, uniting the clans. Duratan was one of the leaders at that time. Grommash Hellscream was just a child. He was the youngest clan leader because as like a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, he had killed his father and taken command of his clan. And he was known for having a very high-pitched scream that could pierce people's eardrums and kill them if he was close enough to them. Yeah, so that was the first Horde, and then the first Horde came in to Azeroth. They kind of transitioned from the first Horde to the second Horde with they massacred the Draenei on Outland or on Draenor. I'm not sure if the Orcish people have a name for the planet. Draenor is the Draenei name, otherwise known as the Eredar name for it. Because Draenor just means exile, it's refugee. They called themselves the refugees because they fled their home planet of Argus. So I guess Argusian would be the language. But the orcs themselves, I don't know if they have a name for their planet other than Draenor. In-game, they always refer to it as Draenor. I'm getting off track. But yeah, they slaughtered the Draenei, they built the portal, they came to Azeroth with Medivh's help under the control of Sargeras. They slaughtered Stormwind, they burnt it to the ground. You know, even the stones, they had crushed everything into rubble and dust. All the refugees from Stormwind fled to Lordaeron, and at the time, Varian was a little bit older than Arthas. He was like 3 or 4 years older than Arthas, and he was just a child, and he was a refugee in Lordaeron. And then the second kind of war happened where the orcs, the humans got the Seven Kingdoms of Man in an alliance, as well as the Dwarves of Ironforge and the Wildhammer Dwarves, as well as there were a few gnomes, and they got the High Elves of Quel'Thalas involved. And together, that alliance was able to beat back the Amani trolls and the orcs that had allied. And then, enslaved them, put them in internment camps, all that kind of stuff. And then afterwards, Thrall, frees some of the next generation of orcs and some of the older folks too. And he takes them west to Kalimdor under orders from Medivh, who's now free of Sargeras' corruption because his friends had cut off his head and he got resurrected by his mom. But the Sargeras taint was gone. The corruption. Okay, now this part of the map, I don't remember it being green. This must have changed either during Cataclysm or BFA. Because this area with the dark portal down here, which is where the orcs invaded, used to be all that reddish sand color. Okay, I'm seeing a question mark with the boss. So I'm not sure what expansion that would have changed in. And here is Medivh's tower, Karazhan. He put it there to try and isolate himself off from Stormwind and Elwyn Forest. He knew that there was something wrong with him, and he kind of didn't want anyone to be damaged by his magic. He didn't know that it was Sargeras per se, but he knew that there was some sort of magical power in him that was dangerous to those close by. And his mother was the Guardian. In Warcraft 3, Medivh does introduce himself as the Guardian in some places. The Oracle, the Prophet, he goes by a lot of names, but the Guardian, way back when, was just a bunch of humans and elves, just regular mages with no special abilities or whatever, just regular mages, run-of-the-mill mages. They grouped together and they decided that 6 of them would put their powers into one. So you got the Guardian is basically the power of 6 or 7 mages in one body. And I'm not sure, that seemed to be an invisible wall not letting me fly over Stormwind. I've done it before, but I don't know, something's weird. A lot of glitches in this game. Weird little house on the mountains there, the waterfall. Don't want to fly back up to Lackland. I already flew over Wetlands and Twilight Highlands, Lochwadon, Badlands. Yeah, I'll go over Westfall next. Yeah, I don't remember that burnt part of the forest either. I did play as Alliance back in Wrath of the Lich King, and then when I came back for Legion, I think was 2019. Whatever expansion was 2019. I came back and I wasn't playing the current content at that time. I was mostly doing Warlords of Draenor, and I decided to be Horde when I came back, and that's the account that I still have now. So most of my characters are Horde. I think I made one Alliance character just to get a certain pet that was Alliance exclusive, which is really silly. Like, it's out in the wild. It can just be captured by wild pet battles. I think it was some sort of griffin in the Twilight Highlands. There's no reason why it needed to be an Alliance exclusive. Speaking of pets, there is a pet battle dungeon here in this little town. You just talk to, not that guy, but this guy, Marcus Bagman.
Can I help you?
Yeah. He can sell a few unique pets, and if you do have the right ones, you can use this as a way to level up some of your low-level pets. But only for certain fights in the dungeon. It's not as easy as Wailing Caverns. And here, I go down close to the ground. We might be lucky enough to see Stitches wandering around. Stitches being an elite abomination that killed a lot of players in vanilla, so I hear, although I wasn't playing at the time. He just wanders this pathway from kind of the edge of Westfall. Silly trees getting in my way, can't see. He wanders around from Darkshire to the border of Westfall and back again. And the players actually help create him unknowingly because they do quests for a quest giver in this little town. Oh, this is apparently Alliance only place. It's been a while since I did that. I guess I did that on my old account. Yeah, you fetch a bunch of things for this guy in town, and only afterwards do you realize that he was stitching together an abomination with all the supplies you got him. And this is Northern Stranglethorn, and again, I'm not sure if this changed during Cataclysm or during BFA, but Northern Stranglethorn and Cape of Stranglethorn used to be a single zone, and this whirlpool thing here in the middle didn't used to be there. It used to be like actual, continuation of the land. And if you are trying to travel here before you unlock flying, just don't. Take a flight path if you can. Take a Zeppelin. There's a Zeppelin that goes there from Orgrimmar. I believe there's a similar one for the Alliance. And then down in Booty Bay, there are boats that go to Ratchet. And Ratchet is a neutral territory in the Barrens in Kalimdor. Yeah, if you try to go there without flying, passing by that thing is very difficult. You have to kind of go in the water. I think that's the only way past. This island out here, Jaguaro Island, Jaguaro, I don't know how you pronounce it. This is a source for a unique pet battle pet, baby monkey, I think it's called, or baby ape. It can only be found on this one island and only while the weather is raining. So I just left an alt character here, logging out every time, and I'd go back, check if it's raining. If not, I just log out. Took me maybe a week to get it on a rainy day. These boats here are part of the Bloodsail Buccaneers, if I recall correctly. Let me land and check. Yeah, Bloodsail. There is an old achievement that I did on my Alliance account back in 2009, but I haven't wasted the time to do it again, where you have to get exalted with those guys and Booty Bay and a bunch of other places, including Ravenhold, which was a really annoying one, all at the same time. So normally, if you're getting reputation for Booty Bay or any of the other goblin zones like Everlook, Ratchet, Gadgetzan, those would decrease your reputation with the Bloodsail Buccaneers, and vice versa. If you got Buccaneers rep, it would decrease your Booty Bay and Everlook and Gadgetzan rep. But there was an exception where there were certain mobs you could kill that would give you Bloodsail Buccaneer rep.
I don't have a target.
Okay, that was weird. Without costing you any rep from the other factions. So it was a really long grind, repetitive, killing things that were awarded like between 5 and 15 reputation, and you needed like 12,000 or 30,000, something like that. And I just realized I missed Fashir, so I'm gonna go back out there and get Fashir. Yeah, getting that reputation grind was insane and gave you the title The Insane, and the achievement was called Insane in the Memory. I believe they've made that a legacy achievement now, so that it's not tracked in the same area. But there was no real benefit to doing it. It was just, it was there. It was, the achievement system was added during Wrath of the Lich King, and I was kind of doing achievements just because they were there. It was like a checklist, things to do. And that's the same kind of reason why I was collecting pets and stuff, even though I wasn't doing pet battles at that time. Now on my current account, when I'm playing as Horde, I do pet battle content quite a lot. In fact, the last year it's been most of what I do in the game. Here's Stormwind Harbor. Somewhere nearby, I think it's those blue banners there, is where Anduin got abducted by Sylvanas during the Shadowlands expansion. And the map really isn't detailed out here because they don't expect you to wander around the ocean. The fatigue bar, if you get too far out to sea, it starts counting down, and then it will kill you once the countdown ends. Sure, if we went through here, Dunmurrow is the dwarf starting zone and gnomes, I believe, and it has this area for Gnomragon, another pet battle dungeon, and there are some unique pets and things that you can get in the Gnomragon instance. And then we see Ironforge. The entrance there is carved out of the mountains. There's a bunch of small towns there. This little cold village is where you start out. And as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, oh, thanks for killing me. This guy, this statue here, is very similar to the ones you see in other areas. I'm trying to remember what area that was. I think it was on Northrend. Northrend in like Zuldrak or Grizzly Hills. Yeah, Thormodan and Grizzly Hills. They have very similar architecture, showing you how far the Ironforged dwarves spread even before like current era. Okay, let's get back out to sea and look at fish here. The Ironforged dwarves, the Wildhammer dwarves, and the Dark Iron dwarves used to be all united under a single banner, and they had the Council of Three Hammers. This was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And then they had a little bit of infighting. They kind of forgot their history and all that kind of stuff. They split apart. The Wildhammer ones are the only ones that live above ground. The Dark Irons and the Bronzebeards both live below ground. And Dagran, which is the son of Moira Bronzebeard, Myrddin's brother, Myrddin, Bran, and Magni's sister. Got that wrong. Magni's daughter. So Myrddin and Bran's niece. She married a Dark Iron guy, the king of the Dark Irons, and then had Dagran as a child. In the original Blackrock Depths raid, you kill him, and you can kill Moira, but apparently that's not canon. Canonically, she survives, and her baby survives, and he looks kind of Dark Iron skinned, but they have him acting more like an Anduin kind of figure, where he's more intelligent, he's more bookwormish. And yeah, he is rediscovering their history. There's a short story on the Warcraft Blizzard website showing him finding an ancient shield, I think it was, and using the inscriptions on it to explain to the guys that they didn't need to be fighting. Now you may notice that once I went underwater, my flying mount was very slow, and even when I switched to an underwater mount, it is still painfully slow. This is like, I know it says increased swim speed. In old expansions, it used to tell you like what percentage you are at, with 100% being like double running speed. So your slow ground mounts were plus 60%. So it's like 1.5 or 1 2/3 of running speed. And then your fast ground mounts were 100%, which was double running speed. And I think water mounts, the best they got up to was 60%. Since it no longer says the numbers, you kind of have to guess. But I would guess it's still 60%. I don't think they've changed that in the past 15 years. If they had, then if we had like a 900% speed underwater mount, similar to the dragon riding for the Dragon Isles, then I think people would have enjoyed this underwater zone a lot more. But as it is, a lot of people barely played this, and because of that, when they were going to do a new underwater zone in BFA, they just drained it of all the water. so you could fly. This one is from Cataclysm. Vashir is from Cataclysm. And the other one that I'm referring to is in the Maelstrom, I think. Am I wrong? It's Najatar. Why does it not show me where on the planet Najatar is? But it's that, but it's drained of all the water. And it's supposedly underwater somewhere, but who knows where. But you can see, like, look at this ancient structures, you know, very similar to Suramar. This would be Night Elf cities that were blasted below the water when Sargeras invaded, and the original Well of Eternity, the one that was like massive, because remember, Northrend, Kalimdor, Eastern Kingdoms, and Pandora used to form a circle. It was kind of like donut shaped, and they had the big well in the middle of magical energy, and it was basically the only lake on the planet. You had the massive ocean of salt water, and then there was this one freshwater lake. There weren't all these tiny little lakes that we see nowadays, like all these tiny little things. It used to be just the one big one, and it was full of magic.
I need a target.
Not sure why this texture abruptly ends. Not sure if they did that on purpose. Yeah, so when Illidan and Malfurion and Tyrande and Broxigar, the orc, helped stop Sargeras from invading, they basically blew up the Well of Eternity at that time, which was so massive an explosion that it literally launched the tectonic plates off in opposite directions from the point. So that's why there's not much land near the Maelstrom. And with that, I think I will call it a day. This was Eastern Kingdoms. There's a lot more lore that I didn't go over, but I can always touch on that in future videos. Alright, like and subscribe. Hopefully you like this video. Let me know if you have any suggestions for future content. I do have a few scripts already written out for other stuff to do, and I am still working on the Dungeons & Dragons campaign videos, but it's pretty slow progress. I am only allowed to do a certain amount of the text-to-speech voice lines per month, so it's gonna be at least 2 more months until the next video, I think. I might be able to do it in January, not sure.